Hey everyone, my name is Scary Spikes and welcome to another Star Citizen video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the C2 Hercules Starlifter. This is not out yet on the PU, this is the PTU 3.13.1, but hopefully will be out in PU very soon. I'm guessing just a little bit before the Invictus launch week kicks off on the 21st of May. This is a very interesting ship that I personally have been looking forward to for quite some time, and I want to share my views and opinions about it, as well as give you some ideas with some loadouts to start off with, and of course those loadouts you can choose to manipulate as you see fit based on your use of the ship. Before we get started though, I just wanted to give a very quick shout out to one of our VIP Gold contributors, the War Doctor. He's one of our newest community members and has been incredibly supportive and really fun to play with. He's also been quite active in Discord and been appearing in our Twitch streams as well. So War Doctor, thank you so very much for being a part of this community and for being a VIP Gold contributor. It really does mean a lot to me. Now also, before we begin, make sure to join us on the stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. over on Twitch, as well as our Discord community, the links for which will be in the description below. Without further ado, let's get started with this video. Let's begin as always by taking a tour around the exterior of the ship. And we'll take an interior tour, and then I'll show you everything that I know about which components should be fitted to this ship, at least to start. Note that the M2, the military variant of the ship, is very similar and pretty much identical in structure with a few key differences. We won't be talking about the M2 in this video, but if you'd like to see that, please let me know in the comments below. Moving to a slightly smaller hangar now for the exterior tour of the ship. Mostly because it despawned in the larger hangar, but in any case, I digress. We'll have a look at the exterior features here, starting off with the front ramp. Now there's these two flaps here that extend outwards, and then the ramp comes down from the inside of the floor of the cargo bay. So that is really cool, and for the longest time I didn't actually know that there was a ramp on the front of the ship. So that's very useful, and you can go ahead and activate it by standing underneath this button here. You can even zoom in by holding F and zooming in your mouse wheel going up, and you can actually lock your door here with the right section of the pad and close and open it with the left part of the pad here. And moving on towards the other side of the ship here, the port side, you'll notice a few things. We have some maneuvering thrusters up here, looks like some vents up here, and then we have our intake for our main engines here. That's mostly for atmospheric flight. Moving over, we can see that we have a serial number on the ship here, which is really nice. And then moving over, we see that we have our first set of VTOL thrusters. So this is the VTOL L1, the nice little LED strip here in the wing, followed by the well for one of the main landing gear, and of course the port side landing gear as well. Note that the landing gear can be operated independently of the VTOL thrusters, so you can have the landing gear in and the VTOL thrusters activated and vice versa, and you don't need to have both of them down or both of them activated. So you can do them independently as you see fit, depending on the situation at hand. Moving a little bit further here, we can see that we have our first set of thrusters here on the port side of the ship on the rear end, as well as some different kinds of vents here, it looks like, and of course the huge fin that extends off the port side of the ship all the way to the back here. And unlike the Mercury Star Runner, this one does seem to be fairly symmetrical, so we see another fin on the starboard side. Moving on, we have a really nice ramp here, and it does appear that CIG did fix the ramp to a degree at least. It's still a little bit off the ground, but that's okay, where you weren't actually able to walk on the ramp itself here. So it looks like they did fix that, and of course we are still in PTU if you're curious, so there may be a number of bugs that have issues on the issue console which are yet to be addressed. With that being said, moving around to the starboard side of the ship, we see everything that we saw on the back end of the port side, and that being the two main thrusters there, as well as the big wing here spanning the opposite end of the ship. And of course we also have our starboard side landing gear, and of course our starboard side VTOL thrusters as indicated there. Additionally, moving over, we can see that we have a few other small things like some vents and maneuvering thrusters on the side, And then of course, moving forward, we have the intakes again, followed by some more vents up here, some more thrusters up there, and then moving around the front of the ship, we have the front ramp again. That being said, we'll have a look inside the ship and see what we can see. First of all, it's pretty amazing when you walk in here because there's a few things that stand out to you right away. The first thing is obviously that you basically have a clear path from the front to the back and vice versa if you wanted to maybe land a few ships from the back of the ship here into the cargo ramp here and then fly them out the front. And also that there is an elevator here as well as a ladder for when there are power low situations. The other thing that I've noticed in its design is it's really cool that there is this sort of elevated center area here, which you can see there's a bit of a bump in the floor of the deck just above to help accommodate some of the larger ships like the Ballista, for example. It does so really well. You can actually fit 3 Nova tanks in here, which is pretty amazing. I don't own a tank at the moment, but once Invictus Week comes out, I'm hoping they'll become available, and then we'll take a video on the Nova tank as well, and play around with it and see how many of those bad boys we can stuff in here, but I reckon it's probably 3 as long as we get them in sideways. But I digress. Closing the front ramp here is as easy as just going to the front panel here and clicking on close. And we also do have this. This is very curious and it's a really welcome addition. Now, if you remember from the MSR, we did have individual room controls for lighting. Well, this is exactly what this is. We can turn the lights off completely by hitting that button there. Very nice. We can turn on the auxiliary lights by hitting the middle button. That is really cool. And finally, we can turn on the main lights by hitting the top button. And having this kind of control in your ship is extremely welcome, and it really adds to the immersion factor. One of the things that unfortunately does not add to the immersion factor is the fact that the color scheme and the lighting in this front area here is extremely broken at the moment. This is obviously way too bright for what it's supposed to be, and if you happen to be a little bit of an explorer, you'll notice that you have some major lighting and texture issues walking on the door of the front ramp of the ship. Now, there is an issue council report that I put up about this, and it has already been confirmed, but the more people that confirm it, the faster that CIG will see and fix it. So if you're one for immersion and you would like to help fix that issue, please make sure to check the link in the description and go and confirm this even further so that it can get into CIG's workflow, and so that they can fix this before it hits the PU. But again, I digress. We'll have a look and see that there is also a lock button here, and from what you've seen on the exterior tour, we do have the same lock button on the outside of the ship as well, and this will simply lock the door so that it is not accessible from the outside. I should note that at the moment it is still possible to open the door, however it is not possible to close the door from the inside, and I'm not sure if that's something that is intended or not, but again, we're in PTU, and that's one of those things that I imagine will be ironed out down the road. Now, moving to the back of the ship here, of course, we have the main ramp of the ship, and we don't have those light controls that we had at the very front of the ship, but we still have our lock button, as well as the main close button here for the ramp, which will simply bring the ramp up and close it against the sides of the ship here. I'm very curious to see if this actually seals all the way around, because I know before the hotfix on the PTU, there was a little bit that stuck out here at the top, but it looks like they've actually cleaned that up real nice. There was a big hole up here, so it seems like they are definitely paying a lot of attention to the C2, and I'm really glad about that. I'm going to go ahead and lock this so that it's not accessible from the outside. And there we go, and as soon as it turns red, we're able to see that it is locked. So even your party members will not be able to access that from the outside as long as it is locked, which is really quite nice. And as you'll see when we get into the rest of the interior tour here, you will be able to actually lock specific rooms as well, which is really nice just in case you happen to get boarded. It can happen. We have the elevator here, and it's important to note that this elevator will take you downstairs as well. It'll take you outside of the ship. And you have options to exit the ship and go to the top deck, and then of course we also have that ladder there that can take you to the upper deck of the ship if there's no power on the ship. We'll just go ahead and take this up to the next level and continue our tour from there. After taking the elevator up to the second deck of the ship, we can see that there is quite a bit of symmetry here, which is very different from the MSR, which was Crusader Industries' last foray into spaceship making. This is just a pretty cool difference here. As you can see, there's a lot more of an industrial look up here. We do have some exposed piping and wiring and things like that that you would expect to almost always see inside of a Drake interplanetary ship. So I really quite like this, and it really goes along with the mythos of the ship, the fact that it's really just an industrial military style, you know, transport ship, and it really gives off that vibe when you're in here. And it's also quite symmetrical, again, very, very different from what we were used to when the MSR came out. When I looked at these different components here, they actually turned out not to be components. They turned out to be different areas that you can open up to access different parts of the ship. Now here it looks like we have some kind of vent, and we have access to some kind of maintenance panel here, but there are others that you can open up which gives you access to things like storage containers. So that's really interesting. At first I didn't even know that you could open these, and these actually exist along the sides of this this area here, as well as on the starboard side of the ship. At first I thought that this was just as a result of the ceiling on the deck below being raised up to be able to accommodate larger ships. What's also really cool is that you don't have to walk all the way around the front of the ship in order to be able to access the starboard side. You can simply cross over these two little bridges available here and here. What's also really cool is that you've got this very industrial look, like I said, very similar to that what you would see inside of a Drake interplanetary ship, with these like glowing tubes or whatever these things are. They look like cables or tubes or something like that, but it looks like they might be output from the generators back here, creating power and delivering that power to the actual thrusters in the back of the ship. Now, I'm not sure if I'm too crazy about that huge glowing light in there, but I digress. Let's have a look from the port side of the ship around to the back. We'll make our way around to the starboard side of the ship, followed by a tour of the flight deck up front. So we'll go ahead and close these up first. You can explore the rest of the ship here at your leisure, and I'm not quite sure if this ship has all the same little cubbies and hidden compartments that the MSR had, but it's definitely worth a look in your own time. This is the recreation area of the ship. It's quite a small one, but considering that the ship can be operated by 2 people, it definitely makes sense. It's really well lit, and there's a little bit of storage here with the Crusader logo on the wall. Looks like we have a bookshelf with a couple of small statues and some pretty good lighting in here. It definitely feels really cozy, especially for a spaceship. Of course, we have the Crusader branded flat screen TV, which is still a thing in 2951. Of course, we have what looks like a bench, and I'm not really quite sure what that is. Maybe it's some kind of futuristic remote, but you do have the option to sit on the bench here. Looks like there's 2 places to sit. We have a little magazine here. It's quite interesting. Moving on here, looks like we have sort of like a refrigeration unit that has some drinks and snacks in it, and it's got a watermelon in there. Looking forward to digging into that a little bit later. But we have some storage space, looks like a little bit of utility space and bags and stuff like that, some supplies over on this side. And moving over here, we can see that we have some, looks like utensil holders and some kinds of pans and stuff like that, as well as cups and bowls and different types of kitchen utensils. So that's really interesting to have that there, as well as it looks like some racks down here, probably for these things here. So that's pretty cool. And on the other side here, it looks like we have what looks like a drink machine here. This looks like maybe an espresso maker, and it looks like we have maybe an oven and a microwave, and again some more of these racks down here for some additional storage. The lighting is really on point too. I really like the very subtle lighting that you can see. There's some edge lighting here, and then we can see the lighting in the roof, and then some accent lights down here as well. Really, really nice to have that. It's very well lit, and it just feels really homey, so to speak. And moving on, we have a couple of more storage areas here. This happens to be a bookshelf, again, with some of its own lighting, and a couple of small little statues in here, and then, of course, a little cubby hole here with, looks like some comfortable bench seating for, looks like up to 4 people could fit in there comfortably. But then we also have this nice table fixed to the wall, and some nice light coming out of here, giving this space a nice ambiance. So I really quite like that. Now, we'll go ahead and leave this area here, if the door will ever open for us. Oh, we had it. There we go. So this is the back of the ship now. We have, looks like, a few components here, or housings for some other ship materials. And this looks sort of like a little maintenance bay back here. There, again, a few exposed pipes and things like that here. And of course, this looks like some kind of reactor or some kind of energy source for the main thrusters. Moving over, we'll take one of the two bridges here across the center line of the ship, and this just looks really cool. It's just really well lit. I'm not a big fan of this huge blinding light on the outside here, but I really like how they've sort of created an animation here with the lighting on some of the hoses or cables coming out of the power sources for the thrusters. At least that's what it looks like. It just looks really, really cool and has a sense of sort of depth and immersion. And I mean, there's quite a lot of detail here. You can see, you know, it's not just something that lights up. There's a lot of detail there, and it's just really, really nice to see that. But moving over, we see the same things on the starboard side at the back here that we saw on the port side, and what looks like to be another generator of sorts, or another power source here. Moving on towards the habitation area of the ship, we'll go through the back door here. We'll see a few things here. Again, this is a very cozy environment. Looks like this screen is on, which is kind of nice. Hopefully those will be useful at some point in the future. And not as much lighting in here as before. Now the recreation area obviously has a little bit more lighting. I'm guessing this area is a little bit quieter. It seems a little bit darker, a little bit more relaxing, maybe for you to go and grab a nap or go to sleep. We do have a few lockers here that can open up, two to be precise. That's nice. You have some nice space, one for each occupant, and of course this ship is operable by 2 crews, so having sets of 2 actually does make sense in this ship. Unlike the MSR, I really feel like they should have had more beds and more crew space on the MSR, but given that you can actually operate this ship with a crew of 2, this totally makes sense. Now this I really, really like. As you remember, on the MSR we had buttons on the outside of the washroom, and we have buttons on the inside, and I'm kind of curious how you would actually close this. And there is actually a button on the inside. If you can imagine that, that is just so cool. So you have a button on the inside here. Close this. Doesn't seem to really be working though. So maybe that's just because we're in PTU and it seems to be stuck open. But it looks like there is also, whoops, I think I may have clicked the wrong button. That could be why. Let me see if I can try this again. Oh, that's interesting. So it seems to open the toilet, but not actually close the door. But hopefully that is something they can fix. And it seems that there's a lock button here as well, which, like, that's just really, really cool. And then of course the button there to close it up again. So that's really cool. And of course we have 2 of these, and it looks like they are identical. So that is really cool. I really like how they put the button on the door here. And as you can imagine, I'm actually really excited about this because I'm experiencing a lot of this stuff for the very first time along with you. So you get to hear some of my genuine reactions when I see something I like, and of course when I see something that I don't like as well. Again, I really enjoy the lighting in here. It's really nice and quaint. There's space enough for 2 people, and there's lots of luggage space in here. Looks like we have 2 more lockers here, so that's really cool. Ample storage for the 2 crew here, and of course a little bit more storage if you have more people on board. This is interesting. I don't know. This seems like it's kind of busted at the moment, but looks like the door does open. As with most MSR ships, you should be, or with most Crusader ships, you should be able to turn on and off the sensors at will and be able to open and close the doors at will as well. So I'm going to take the tunnel here over to the bridge, and as we go, we're going to explore some of the areas here. Now, this looks like it's some kind of power station. So this could be what's maybe providing auxiliary power to the ship. We'll go ahead and open up the other one here and take a look at what's inside. Looks like about the same thing. So this seems to me like maybe an auxiliary power source. It definitely doesn't look like the actual power plants that should be on the ship. Definitely really, really interesting. And we have some more here that we can open. So let's have a look and see what's inside here. This actually looks like a legit component, and this is very likely to be the shield generator. At least that's what it looks like, but I may be wrong here. So if you know what this is, definitely leave a comment down below. I'm gonna go ahead and open this one as well, and this is cool. You see that you got some windows here. You can actually kind of get a look as to what is inside, and it looks like we have the same thing here. So that does look like a shield generator. Then we'll move forward into this next area. This is actually really, really cool. So unlike the M2 it looks like these are actually functional armory racks, and you don't fall through the ship when you use them. At least I haven't in my testing. The armory, I'm sure, in the M2 will be fixed at some point, but from what I hear, you know, it's definitely a big point of contention at the moment for M2 owners, and so it's also just really nice to be able to see that we have some weapon racks here on the C2, which gives you ample storage of all sorts of firearms, which I definitely have in my collection, would be very happy to put up there. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I'm not sure that you may have noticed this if you haven't been using the gun racks or anything else that relies on persistence, but it seems like with the addition of 3.13 and now with 3.13.1, CIG have been quietly including parts of iCache into the game, and they haven't really been vocal about it as far as I've heard, at least. Again, please correct me if you happen to be Evocati and you know a little bit more about that in the comments below. But it seems like I'm able to actually store weapons in my ships and have them come back and be in the same place as they put them, even in between sessions. So that is really interesting to know, and if you happen to manage to try this and it's successful for you, please also let me know in the comments, because I'd like to know how you fared with that. And if that is indeed true, then we can definitely expect for iCache to be finished implementing in this year, and hopefully that will really improve our immersion, which I'm really looking forward to. So we have some more things that can open up here, and it seems to be a very, very common thing around this ship. There's just so many things that open up. One thing that I might have missed, actually, it looks like these might actually be escape pods. I'm not 100% sure if this would be one, but it seems very similar to this. They just seem to be slightly different shapes, but I know that this one you can actually get inside, but the other one you can't. So this one doesn't let you go inside, whereas this one you can stand inside of it. So that is pretty cool, and I really like that. So it looks like there are 2 escape pods in this. Maybe again, just could be something to do with maintenance or something along those lines, or possibly even storage, but we'll know in the future when that gets fleshed out a little bit more, hopefully. Now, this is my one gripe that I have with the C2, and it's one that I have with Crusader ships in general, and it's that there is a ton of wasted space here. If we look at the bridge, first of all, the bridge looks absolutely gorgeous. If we look up here, we can see that the bridge actually looks like an A380 cockpit to a degree. It's just really, really cool. There's a huge view here from the front window. There's some nice ambient lighting. There's just some really nice screens and buttons that are assigned to different functions, and that's all really, really cool. But to be honest, I really feel like these seats could have been here, and they could have just swiveled around. You could have sat down, they could have swiveled back and then moved forward. And then if we did that, we would have room to actually put another seat here to have room for additional operators that could work on different systems of the ship, like managing shields or heat or power or other things like that. Because these consoles here looks like they were just kind of left haphazardly, and I wish that this was something that we can use, despite the fact that the minimum crew size of the ship is still 2. That being said, I really do like the design of the ship, and once we have a seat inside here, you'll see why. I mean, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, we are in space and we're currently stopped, but there's just so much to see here. The yoke looks really, really cool. We have all these buttons here. Now, most of these buttons don't really do anything, although you can see that a lot of them are actually mapped to different features of the ship. So if we look around here, we have different buttons that actually light up when you hover over them, and they have all sorts of different features. And I'm not sure if many of them are yet implemented, but it's just so cool to know that there's a prospect up in the future that we may be able to just use these buttons independently to do different things. Just really, really cool. And it looks like we have a scan in progress. It's actually kind of interesting. But that being said, there are a number of MFDs here. Looks like we have 3 MFDs in the front here. And then we also have another MFD over here. And then, of course, the co-pilot also has 1 MFD there, another one there, and another one there. So 1 less than the pilot, but that just looks really, really cool. And I mean, I'm a huge flight enthusiast as well, and I really like how this thing just looks like a big ass jumbo giant jet. It's just pretty awesome. The last thing that I want to show you is that you are actually able to lock this door here. So if we click on close, which I really think that they ought to actually change maybe the font here so that we don't have to see this thing kind of like protruding outside of the boundaries of the button, but you can actually lock yourself in the cockpit here, and that is just so cool because now the door shouldn't open if we walk in front of it, and it shouldn't be accessible to anyone outside of the cockpit. So if you're in here and maybe you have some friends in the ship and the ship gets boarded, you really don't have anything to worry about. I mean, your friends may perish in the defense of the ship, but at least you will never actually lose the ship. And once the attackers realize that, they'll probably flee and will probably leave your cargo intact, unless they want to call their friends to actually destroy the ship, given that they can't actually take over it. So that is a really, really cool thing. And for those of you who really enjoy role-playing, I think that would be a really, really fun thing to be able to take advantage of in the future, and definitely something that we will have a look at on our streams. But that being said, this is basically the inside of the ship, and we're going to move on to my recommendations for how to load out the ship. So let's head back and land this thing and look into the Vehicle Loadout Manager for my recommendations on how to load up the C2 Starlifter. Now, I will give you a link for Hercules in the description below, both for the stock build of this ship as well as for my recommendations, and feel free to include your own recommendations in the comments below. Finally, let's talk about the components that this ship comes with stock and my recommendations on how to upgrade it. Now again, these are just my recommendations based on my use case. You may have a different use case and might find that there are different components that work better for you, and so it's worth experimenting at least a little bit to find something that's better for you. Maybe something that's more cost effective, or maybe something that has a different level of efficiency, or just something you're willing to settle on that works for you. Now, again, I'm not a professional here, but I will include both links to the stock as well as my recommended loadout, and feel free to share your own in the comments below. Make sure you're in your mobi-glass and then select the Vehicle Loadout Manager. It's the second tab at the bottom. And then over on the top right-hand corner, make sure that you have your Hercules C2 Starlifter selected. The first thing we'll look at is the propulsion. The propulsion, it comes with a Karma QT drive. It's a size 3, as is pretty much everything else on this ship. It is a grade C, which is not ideal, and it's industrial class. Now, I would personally recommend the TS2. Mind you, I don't have the recommended components with me at the moment, since this is a brand new copied over account on the PTU, but you'll be able to see those in the links. So if you want to follow along, make sure to click on the links, and then you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But the TS2 is a very, very good quantum drive. It's very fast. It's a little fuel hungry, and it is a little expensive, but it's honestly really, really good. And this thing is brutally slow, so I would definitely recommend changing this out, especially if you're doing some long haul hauling. Moving on, we'll go into the systems tab here, and we'll see that we have 2 size 3 coolers, 1 size 3 power plant, and 2 size 3 shields. So for the coolers, I would go with the Blizzards, the same as in my Carrick video. If you haven't seen that, by the way, make sure to go watch that. It's a great video, and it's a great ship. The Blizzards do a fantastic job. They provide more than adequate cooling for all of your components, especially for the size of weapons that we have on the ship. It tends to do quite well in self-defense for cooling your weapons, so the Blizzards will work just fine. For the power plant, as you guys already know if you've seen my previous videos, I am a huge fan of the JS series, the 3, 4, and 500 for the size 1, size 2, and size 3 variants respectively. And so for this, of course, naturally I would choose the JS 500. And moving on, for the shield generators, I would be picking the parapets. Now the strongholds are actually really, really good, and I would upgrade these last if you're having some trouble with funds and you're not able to afford the parapets. The strongholds are actually great. These are the ones that come stock on the 600i as well, and they are pretty good. They soak up quite a bit of damage, and they have a pretty decent regen rate as well. Just note that the FR86s are available as well, but I wouldn't recommend shields with a high regen rate on a larger ship. The reason for that is because the shield pool on these are so big that most other ships that are small to medium size will be really, really hard pressed to punch through them to begin with. They'll probably end up just giving up before you will need to even worry about recharging your shields. That being said, if you find yourself in a combat situation more often than you'd like, you can certainly change one of these to the parapet, change the other one over to an FR86, and see if that works for you. Generally speaking, I like the extra shield pool on larger ships and the extra regen rate on smaller ships. So for my particular tastes, I'm going to go ahead and keep the parapets there. But again, the strongholds are great. So if you need to replace things in order, I would definitely recommend replacing the quantum drive first. Then I would recommend replacing the power plant, then the coolers, and lastly the shield generators, in that order. Now, and with regards to the weaponry here, of course, this is not a fighting ship, but it does have some decent weapons in order to protect itself. Now, it does have 2 pilot-controlled weapons here, and we can see that they're on size 5 gimbals, meaning that if you want to put size 5 weapons on there, you can. They'll just be fixed weapons, which honestly might be a little tricky in this case because this is a very big ship. You know, maybe you can get away with size 5 fixed weapons on a 600i, but this thing is a lot slower, a lot bigger, a lot heavier, and a lot more difficult to maneuver. So that being said, if you're a little bit newer, you find yourself, you know, in combat situations where there's a lot of movement, you might want to actually keep these size 5 gimbals. But I would recommend you changing out the Gatlings to something a little bit more like a laser repeater, like a CF447 Rhino. The stuff that comes stock on the Constellation Andromeda, for example. Now, if you do want to go with size 5s, I would definitely remove the gimbals and put the CF557 Galdrine laser repeaters in there instead. They'll do just a ton more damage than the Rhinos, but of course, you'll need to aim them using your ship, which that could be tricky. So if you're finding yourself in PvE battles, you know, if you're being attacked by PvE pirates or things like that, you know, it's fine. You can definitely use the size 5 fixed weapons. They will suffice. They'll be absolutely fine. They'll do tons of damage. If you find yourself in more PvP situations or situations that involve a lot more movement, I would definitely recommend changing those over to the size 4s and perhaps even keeping the gimbals on them just in case. Now, there are 2 turrets here as well with 2 size 4 weapons in them each, and again, I would choose the CF447 laser repeaters, or you could choose other weapons that are based on your personal tastes. Again, I'm not a big fan of the M4A, M5A, M6A, and so on cannons. They're not great. Their damage is pretty subpar, especially when you compare the higher fire rate and better range of the CF series of laser repeaters. I just like those a whole lot more, and they're a lot more consistent, at least in my experience. So that's going to do it for me. I really appreciate that you made it to the end of this video. I know it was a bit of a longer one, so thank you so very much for watching. And if you enjoyed the video and found it particularly helpful to you, please make sure to let me know by leaving a like, subscribing if you're new, and ringing the bell so that you never miss a video in the future. That being said, I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.